Hey everybody, it's me, Zach. This is Judy, and welcome back to our channel. Okay everybody, so today I'm doing this kind of like longer extended video. Listen, I kind of decided to do this spur of the moment like I do a lot of times when it comes to questionable purchases I make. But since I've recently become invested in one singer, songwriter, poetress, philosopher, Gabbie Hannah, I saw that she was doing a virtual book tour for her new book of poems, Dandelion, okay? Dandelion, that's the name of the book of the poems. So before we get too much into it, it's of course time to check in with our leading poetry correspondent, Judy Lou. Judy, what are your thoughts?
My favorite poem is Positions by poetress Ariana Grande. Switchin' the positions for you. Cookin' in the kitchen, and I'm in the bedroom. I'm in the Olympics, way I'm jumpin' through hoops. Know my love infinite, nothin' I wouldn't do.
Okay, interesting. Okay, so I am aware that outside of her wonderful singing and music video performance skills, that she does have a whole other book of poetry that I've never read. So I just want to be clear what I'm coming and bringing to the table in this, and that's that I've never read that. I've never read it. I've never picked it up. I think Aphrodite's Peach, who is a YouTuber that I follow in general, I think she did a video on it, and that might be the extent of what I know. If I'm correct, if I recall correctly, there were some concerns about the way that maybe Gabbie Hannah portrayed mental health, maybe some concerns about LGBTQ issues, and listen, I'm not going to speak to that because, like I said, I've not read that book. So I'm going to participate in this virtual book tour signing thing. Now, she did already do one that was posted to her, what do you call it, YouTube channel, but I'm attending the one that is on October 13th at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. I happen to have the day off today anyways, so I figured, why not jump into this? That comes also with a signed copy, I believe, of the book. When you registered for the event, you just had to give your general name, information, and then it did give you an option to ask her a question. I'm gonna be honest, my question wasn't clever. It wasn't me asking her if she would rather eat a horse or an egg. you know the type of trolling I used to do back in the day. I think I just asked her something basic like, oh, like, have any of your YouTube experiences led you to writing a song or a poem or whatever, whoever, okay? So I don't know if anything interesting is gonna come from this virtual book tour signing thing, but I am gonna screen record it. If anything particularly of interest happens, I'll let you know. I haven't, like I said, watched the one that's already on her YouTube channel because I didn't want to be spoiled. But potentially what I'll do is go back and watch that and see if it's like a unique experience at every tour, virtual tour experience, or what, okay? So that's kind of what we have in store. I'll give you the rundown of how that event went. Then, in like a week or two, when I get the actual book, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna give you my thoughts. Maybe I'll highlight some like great things. Maybe I'll highlight some not so great things. I don't know. I haven't read the book yet, so I can't tell you what my opinions are gonna be about it. And that will be this video. But this is like all right now, so you're probably not gonna see this for a couple weeks. But anyways, I'm gonna go because literally this is about to start in 19 minutes, and I'll see you all in a bit. Okay, so I just got done with the little live stream book tour. It wasn't no books were signed. I was wrong about saying it was a book signing. I think I am supposed to get a signed book, but honestly, I'm a little unclear. And honestly, while I was watching, a lot of people seemed to be unclear of like what they were getting for their money. Because I didn't mention this in the little pre-recording that I did. But I paid about $24 for this experience, okay? And I assume that experience also came with a signed copy of the book, which seems to be, to me, a reasonable price to get a book, and then like the special fan only experience with Gabbie. And I'm just unclear on what I'm gonna get, so stay tuned for that, because I haven't gotten any kind of like shipping notification that the book is on its way or anything. So I may be making this whole video thinking I'm gonna be able to review the book and then potentially not have a book. I'm not sure. It also was clear that a lot of people had already pre-ordered the book in other forms too. So there were people in the chat that were saying they had like 4 copies of the book, and I'm just like, that seems maybe excessive. But I guess if you want to give it to a friend or somebody or something, I guess I get that. But 4 copies for yourself, I mean, live your truth, girl. I don't, not for me, not today. So the beginning of the stream started off with like 2 weird polls and a weird game where the host asked Gabbie a whole bunch of, she called it a game, but it was basically like, I'm gonna ask you questions that have nothing to do with your career, your book, your poetry, your anything. It was like questions like, what was the last series that you binged? On a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you like going out to eat? I'm not kidding you. I was like, who cares? Who cares? Honestly, who cares? Who cares? This is not a Gabbie Hannah Q&A video. I'm supposed to be learning about her book. I want to hear about her book. But they did jump in, and the majority of the stream was about her book. To be honest, there were a lot of fan-submitted questions that I just truly thought were not, I mean, I'm sure they're interesting to people who care about her, but I mean, there's just nothing exciting that I'm going to share with you in this video. The one thing I will say about the fan submitted questions is there was somebody in this chat, I don't even remember what their name was, but they were, I don't know if they were trolling or they were genuinely that serious, but I decided to start amplifying their question because I was like, I gotta hear what Gabbie Hannah has to say about this. And that was about her tooth gem. So there's this person that was just like, do you still have your tooth gem? Do you still have your tooth gem? And I'm like, what the hell? So I started also putting in the chat, do you still have your tooth gem? Would you recommend that other people get a tooth gem? And then the host did not address the tooth gem, but then Gabbie out of nowhere was like, listen, here's what I gotta say about the tooth gem.
Oh my God.
People were asking about my tooth gem. Guys, the tooth gem lasted at least 3 days and it was gone. The tooth gem is not alive anymore.
No tooth gem. Aww.
Y'all know I love a trolley question like that. Like a question that, I mean, everybody else was asking these basic questions like, what was your inspiration for this book? Like, what's your favorite song you've ever written? What's your favorite illustration in the book? And I get why people want to know those things, but I want to know the stupid questions. I want to know about your tooth gem, Gabbie Hannah. I will say towards the end of it, I did try to start asking a little bit trolly questions in the chat because it was clear that the question that I had submitted in advance was not going to get answered. So I was just like, oh, Gabbie Hannah, are you ever going to respond to Peter Mon, who has been trying to get a response to you about allegedly what Shane Dawson said to you? Oh, Gabbie Hannah, could you say hello to my dog Judy? She loves you. Oh, Gabbie Hannah, who would you want to go on tour with if you had to pick between like Trisha Paytas and Shane Dawson? Like, I was asking like silly stuff like that. She did not answer any of those questions. And then I think the highlight of this book tour was her singing, which like, I mean, go off, sis, but like also, this is about your book, so here we are with your singing, which I think a lot of people seem to enjoy it, so I'm glad they got their life.
Guys, there's so much cat hair stuck in my lip gloss!
I will say, Gabbie Hannah singing acoustically, she had a friend in the background playing guitar for her, was a much different vibe from Call Me Crazy. If you watch that review video, I did say, like, I've never listened to a Gabbie Hannah anything before. And the acoustic vibe, listen, do I think she's the most talented singer? No, but I do think she's capable of singing. And it's interesting because a lot of comments on my last video about her was like, oh my gosh, she's not a good singer. Like, oh my gosh, autotune. And I will say, like, I think she's a good enough singer. And this is coming from somebody, I've seen Trisha Paytas live, and homegirl really is not a good singer, okay? She's just not. But Gabbie Hanna, like, I think she has some skills. And I do like an acoustic type of artist. Like, one of my favorite artists is Sarah Bareilles. And I love when she's, like, doing the acoustic thing. And I think if Gabbie focused more on that, and less on trying to be a pop diva, like, that could be interesting. I could be about it. Because every single song, she did 3 songs. I'd never heard them before. I don't even know if I could tell you the names of them off the top of my head. But they were all, like, pretty chill. I will say at the end of one, she had this really awkward moment where she literally was, like, finishing singing this really serious lyric, or at least what I interpreted to be serious, and then she's like literally picking cat hair out of her lipstick. And then there was another moment where she was just like forgetting the words to her own songs. And that's like, I'm like, what did we pay for here? I'm always just like, how does an artist who writes her own songs, or their songs, or his songs, like, not know the words? Which, listen, maybe everybody messes up every once in a while, but I just got a lot of questions. I got a lot of questions.
This is gonna hurt, this is gonna hurt. Give it all we can, it'll never work.
The only other highlight from this, in my opinion, was that she released a snippet of music from her upcoming single Warning Shots, which was interesting because it's supposed to be like a rock song, and we stan our rock queen, I guess. So then she also shows like an image from the upcoming album work or something, or artwork from the song, I don't know. And she also just shows all the photos in her phone, and it's like, oh my god, did we just have a Chris Evans moment? But overall, I would say it was actually, I mean, pretty boring. It didn't feel super special, which I would think you would want to make one of those things a little bit more special, especially because if you're doing this thing in person, right, like that experience is going to be so much more different, because I am assuming you're going to get to like actually hand your book over to her, have her sign it, get to have some kind of, you know, back and forth. That's been my experience with like the one book signing I ever did. It was by Janet Mock. And I think that like special moment was missing. Like, I think it could have been cool if she would have actually signed books for people. I would have been willing to wait for her to sign my book, to somehow have a conversation, or even if I didn't, even if I just watched a stream of her like opening it up, reading the question that each of us had to submit when we signed up for it, signing here to Zachary, and then answering my question as she did it. I think that could be so cool. Logistically, that might be a nightmare, but again, I'm wanting like a special experience. So anyways, that's my thoughts about the book tour, the virtual book tour portion of this video, and I will get back to you once I have the actual book in hand and I've read it, and will give you all of my thoughts. Okay, everybody, it's been, I don't know, probably a week and a half, and I'm back again with the Dandelion book, written and illustrated by Miss Gabbie Hanna. And listen, I'm kind of embarrassed because it took me a while to get through, not because it's like particularly a hard read. It's a pretty easy read. Like, I would guess any young adult, high schooler could get through this pretty quickly. I'm just like, in general, a slow reader, and also like doing other things with my life outside of just the Gabbie Hanna poetry book. I have this little Chipotle napkin with all of my notes on it, because I just was like, I didn't have any, you know when you're reading a book and you need a bookmark and you don't have anything around, and then also you want to take notes, but this Chipotle napkin is all you got. Well, that's where all my trusty notes are for this. Now, if you don't recall from like, I don't know, probably 5 or 10 minutes ago in this video, I attended this virtual meet and greet, which like, now that some time has passed and I've read the book, I do have some questions like, why didn't she read any poetry from this book when it was a book tour, but instead she took time to sing, but that's neither here nor there. I did want to share with you the very personalized, special signature that she gave me in this book, and it is right here, this sticker. She didn't even sign the actual book, she signed a sticker that I'm assuming somebody else put in the book for her. So, you know, I thought I was going to be getting this really personalized experience because I signed up to go to this exclusive event, and I thought there'd be anything like, even a like to Zach, Gabbie Hannah. She didn't even give me her last name. She gave me Gabbie Heart. She gave me Gabbie with a heart, okay? So, you know, it is what it is. It's not like I'm the biggest Gabbie Hannah stan, fan, whatever, whoever, right? But listen, I was kind of expecting more than a sticker. But listen, I only paid $24 in total for like getting to go to the event, getting the signed copy. The book itself on the back is listed as $17.99 in US dollars, $24.99 in Canadian dollars. So I feel like it was worth it still at the end. You know, I assume other people got more out of that virtual meet and greet. Well, it wasn't a meet and greet. It was a virtual book tour that I got. Okay, so it is what it is. Now, before I get talking too much about the book, I want to preface some things, okay? Things that I'm not. A poet, an author of any type, a literary genius or expert or fanatic. I mean, I read, but I don't, like, I would not, you know, there's people out there that, like, swear by reading as a hobby. I, like, read occasionally, okay? And actually, I get most of my reading through, like, reading the news and stuff like that. Like, I'm not somebody who is actively out here buying a lot of books, so maybe that doesn't give me the expertise to review this, but as a fan of YouTube, I think I have every right to, like, give my opinion. So if you don't want it, feel free to click off, okay? Because you're getting my uneducated opinion. Now, what I will say is that what I tried to keep in mind, okay? What I tried to keep in mind when I was reading this is who is Gabbie Hanna'S real, true life audience? Like, who is the demographic that she's marketing this book for, that she's writing this book for? And the reality is it's probably like high school girls, young adults, like young women. I'm certainly not her. A 31-year-old cis gay white man is not her market, okay? At least I wouldn't believe so. So I did try to keep that in mind. With that being said, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later, one place I do have expertise is that I did get an elementary education bachelor's degree. That's okay. And then I got a higher education degree for my master's. And so I do think that there's a place, I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that's important to note, because when I was in elementary education, I did do a lot of classes and stuff on, like, I took a whole class on, like, children's literature and, like, teaching kids through books, right? I think that that's going to be important later, and so I guess I'll just say that. Probably didn't need to say it until it became relevant, but it felt like a good thing to preface. But most importantly, I think it's important to remember that this is probably made for a woman-identified audience from ages like 15 to maybe 25, okay? I'm gonna give her that 10-year span of people who might be interested in reading this book. If you don't fit in that category, I mean, it's really hard for me to believe that you would enjoy this. I'm just saying. Now, with all of that being said, I am going to give you my real quick into it, okay? We're going to get my real, very quick opinion, and it's that this isn't, at best, this is not great, and at worst, it's trash, okay? I would lean towards my at best. I think that there's probably some people that genuinely enjoy this, connect with the content, etc. But when I think about poetry, I'm really thinking about something that's going to make me think about things. It's going to make me, think about what was the author's intention here, and then how am I interpreting this? How am I taking this? How am I applying this poem to my life? I've always kind of hated poetry because of that. I do tend to like things more straightforward, but I think good poetry elicits a lot of thought and emotion and makes you think about things. It's not always cut and dry, or sometimes it can be cut and dry, but it's done very creatively, thoughtfully to get you to think for a very specific image, okay? This was not that. This was so straightforward. It felt a little bit like somebody who was trying really hard in high school to write edgy poetry. And in my opinion, it failed at doing that. Like, it failed. So one of my biggest critiques is that so much of this is like, I'm, again, not a poet, but I could have written some of this. In fact, I feel like for a lot of this, I could have gone to Pinterest and pulled up Pinterest quotes and found some of this written on some image that was then shared to the Facebook by your high school friend Mackenzie, okay? That's what I'm feeling here. For example, there is this poem called Cordial. Now look at that. That is 2 whole lines. And it says, I broke up with my demons, we're much better off as friends. Okay? So like, 1, you're trying to be real edgy here, like, oh my gosh. And then 2, do you all not see those 2 lines being on somebody from your high school's Facebook, and they're like, oh my god, yes, agree, mood, this is so deep. And it's like, girl, it's not that deep. And there are so many poems like that. There's so many poems, okay? Like this one called Plagiarism, okay? And it says, you can't take credit for my sadness, I earned this on my own. Again, like, it's 2 sentences, 2 lines, that's 1 probably sentence, grammar hard, okay? What exactly are you doing here? You're not, for me, Joe Schmo, whoever, whatever, could have written this poem. Why did I pay money for this, right? But again, to each their own. I found a lot of the longer poems, so there were longer poems than just those, but there were a lot of these like 2-line poems throughout the whole book. But I found a lot of the longer poems went in between 2 different types, okay? One type would be like something real serious, but like using very like Dr. Seuss-y types of rhymes, like very childlike rhymes, okay? So, you know, think about your Dr. Seuss, your Shel Silverstein, those kinds of rhymes, but to talk about really super serious topics, which, I don't know, maybe you're doing something there. And then the other extreme end of like the very long, drawn out poems was ones where it was clear that she was like literally just writing down thought with no intention. And for me, that doesn't do a lot for me, right? Like for me, if you're just sitting here writing down your general thoughts, like I'm gonna need you to edit that and use that as an outline to come up with something more creative. There were actually 2 poems that I felt like demonstrated that the best. One was called Bullet, and the other one was called Ramble, which I'll just read you a part of, because I feel like Ramble, I mean, literally it's called Ramble, okay? So she's literally just spewing her thoughts from pen to paper, rambling, but it's very indicative of the other types of really long form poems that she writes in this book. You are a person, a living human organism. Everyone you meet is also a person, a living human organism. When you're looking at a person, a living human organism, they're also looking at you, a person, a living human organism. And as you look at each other, people, living human organisms, you're experiencing 2 totally unique, alternate moments in the same waking moment. You are kissing her, but she is kissing you. You're in a stranger's car, but you are a stranger in someone's car. You bump into someone, but someone has bumped into you. You are heartbroken, but he broke your heart. People get to know you in a way you never got to know yourself because you can't meet yourself. You don't get to make a first impression on yourself. You don't get to know yourself better. You are merely the sum of perceptions of friends, lovers, strangers, customer service workers. To one person, you're the moody looking guy at table 3 who tips pretty well. To another, you're the asshole who ghosted on Tinder. To another, you're the best friend in the world. To another, you're your boyfriend's ex, a slutty bitch. Sometimes you're just the pretty girl at the grocery store checkout. Once you were the person who ruined a telemarketer's day by taking your anger out on them, maybe twice. One time you almost hit a cyclist with your car, but that person is the cyclist who almost was killed. You're none of those things and all of those things, and you never get to pick, and you never get to know. You are an infinite number of impressions all at once. You are just a story. You are stories. Live happily ever after. I mean, I will say one thing is that it sounds much better reading it out loud, because I was able to give it a little bit of a different cadence than it had in my head. But it still feels just like very rambly. Like, what point are you trying to get to here, girl? And that's what that poem left me with. So I feel like there are a lot of poems like that in this book. I mean, certainly I'm not going to read every single one to you, because like, I do respect that like she is working hard for this money maybe, and if y'all want to give it to her, that's your choice, okay? But I'm not going to ruin the surprise by reading everything. I mean, I was a little surprised that she didn't read us even a little bit during her book tour, but that's neither here nor there, okay? For the most part, I really was like impressed by the pictures, the illustrations. Like, I mean, I'm not talented at drawing like that, and I felt like it was really impressive, like the actual just images themselves. I will say they felt a little disjointed and like a little confusing. They were either like clearly had nothing to do with what was going on in the poem, or like trying way too hard, in my opinion. And so for me, I didn't necessarily understand all of them. There were also like several, I mean, I just opened it up there, but I don't want to get demonetized, but there were several portraits of women naked, which like they were beautifully done. I thought they were beautifully drawn, but I never really understood what they had to do with the poems that they were next to, and maybe that's the point. Maybe that's the point, but it was a point I didn't get, okay? I truly didn't understand. And one of the pictures, well, I don't know if it was supposed to be a picture to accompany the poem or not, but there's this poem called Blind, and I'm not gonna read it to you because that really doesn't matter, but she thought she was really doing something with putting the poem on the opposite side in Braille. But girl, this is 2D. What does this do for me? What does this do for me? This is like people who really think that they're like being clever and being accessible to people and like not really doing the work. And maybe her intention was not to have this be for actual folks who could read Braille. Okay, fine. But why put this in here then? What is your point? I don't get it, I guess is what I'm saying. Like, what is the point? Help me understand. I think one of the things that was the toughest for me is that the first like third of the book probably were all pretty lighthearted poems from what my memory tells me and what my memory is giving me right now. Like, I can't remember anything being too out there. I think where this book suffers the most is that there's no continuity or rhyme or reason to like how the book works. It's just like you're reading these like silly fun poems. That's the most I could give you. These silly fun poems, and then all of a sudden you're like reading about codependent relationships, and it's like, oh girl, we were just over here doing this one thing. And now you want to talk about this? And I think the worst part about it all is that there were 3 poems in particular that I just felt like needed some kind of trigger warning, just because, and listen, I think that there's a time and a place for poetry about those things. So that's not me saying like she shouldn't be writing about these things or sharing about these experiences. But seriously, out of nowhere, she throws in a poem about being assaulted, okay? Out of nowhere, she throws in a poem about an eating disorder. Out of nowhere, she throws in a poem about suicide. And I'll probably bleep some of those words out because I know that those things get you demonetized very quickly, okay? But all of those things are like very personal things to people that can really bring up certain kinds of emotions. So when you're just reading a book of poems that like at most up until the point that those came in were about like tough relationships and, you know, making bullet lists and dandelions and things like that, that's a lot. I am not impacted by most of those things in like an extreme way. And even for me, I'm like, how did we get to these topics? So I think that is a big fail of the book. A big fail because, I mean, her demographic is likely young women, 15 to 25, like I said. Like, those are all things that also impact women a lot, young women a lot, and to just throw that at them out of nowhere, And that's not to say also that literature can't be a good way to talk about those things, right? Like, literature can. So this is where I'm going back to when I was talking about learning about being a teacher. Even in like K through 8, right, which was what I was trained to teach kids in. Even in those cases, like, you can use literature, poetry, fiction books, nonfiction books. You can use all of those things to help have difficult conversations with kids. In fact, we talked a lot about that when we were in this very specific children's literature course that I took, where it's like, hey, we can talk about kids that have different types of families, and we can talk to kids about interpersonal conflict, and we can show them examples through books, through stories. And I think certainly that some of these things need to be shared so that people can have these conversations. But I also think people need to know that they're getting into those things, right? Like, people need some kind of awareness that those things are coming up. And I'm not really going to go share those poems with you either, because that's not what this is about. And I don't want to have anybody feel triggered by that conversation or those topics. So again, if that does sound like something you're interested in hearing another person's experience about, I think Gabbie certainly tries to tell that story or give that experience to you. I just, like, 1, don't think it was done super creatively, and 2, don't think it was done effectively, especially considering that, like, just right before it, you're talking about dandelions, and then the next thing you know, you're talking about people being harmed. The only other thing about the book that's important to mention is that every book has a different ending. There's like 3 or 4 different endings, and I actually didn't realize this at first. A colleague of mine here on the YouTube, Aphrodite's Peach, actually told me about it whenever I was privately DMing her. I actually haven't read or watched her review of this. I saw she posted it. I was like, oh my gosh, like, I can't watch it until I read the book myself. But we did talk briefly about it, and she asked me what ending I got, and I got the stories I have to get drunk to tell. And so every book has a different, like, essay writing ending, and it's supposed to, I don't know, to me it kind of now, things are making sense, because during the virtual book tour, there are so many people saying they got like 4 copies, and I was like, why would you get 4 copies? But this is definitely a marketing scheme for her to sell more copies. And during the virtual book tour, she talked about wanting to do some type of memoir type of a book in the future. And I just, like, honestly think some of this could have gone in that. Because these are just like, this isn't even poetry. This is just like full on essays talking about some difficult moments in her life and things like that. And I feel like, you know, to some extent she took a risk in sharing these things, and I think y'all should pay for that if you want to read those things. And it's more of kind of the same things that I was talking about in the poems that, like, probably needed some content warning on it. But the one thing I will say is I think it's, like, really problematic to call this section stories I have to get drunk to tell. And I know not every section is called that, but this particular one in my book is. And the reason I think that's problematic is because I think that that's furthering a stigma of talking about some of these topics that she has in here. I mean, she talks again about, like, her eating disorder, and talks again about, like, some abuse she faced in relationships and things like that. I think that stigmatizes openly talking about those things without having to be drunk about it, you know? And maybe that's, like, something she's working through, and maybe I'm looking into that too deeply. I just wish she would have called it something else, because I feel like we really need to empower people putting their stories into words and sharing those things to the extent that they feel comfortable. And let's be honest, if you have to drink to tell a story to somebody, then you probably don't feel comfortable talking about it. So I just wish she would have named it something else. I wasn't overly, like, moved or touched or anything like that by those stories. Like, I don't think she wrote it to such a level that it was, like, compelling or interesting, outside of, like, I do think it's important for people to share those stories, and so I was compelled in that way. But in terms of writing, it could have been anybody writing those essays, okay? So overall, I think it was just okay. I would not say to rush out and buy it by any means. I think she's already sold plenty anyways, so it's probably doesn't need to be a priority of yours, but it was an okay book. It was just okay. Okay, so don't get excited, and also like be cognizant that if you have experienced some of those things that I've talked about, to maybe not pick it up, or like if you are gonna pick it up, like be in the right headspace, be in the right frame of mind to do it, okay? So I hope you all enjoyed this. I know I'm not a literary expert. I'm not Shakespeare. I'm not Emily Dickinson. I'm not Maya Angelou. I'm just Zachary Michael. I'm just Zachary Michael, a gay man on the internet with more opinions than is probably necessary. I had so much fun filming this though. If this is your first time on my channel, please feel free to subscribe down below and hit the bell button so you get notifications. As always, please live, laugh, love, eat, pray, love, share, like, comment, and follow me on all of my social media. I had so much fun with y'all today, and I'll see y'all next time. Bye!